The man at the security checkpoint wore faded jeans and a gray sweatshirt with coffee stains on the sleeve. His daughter, maybe 7 years old, clung to his hand while clutching a stuffed dolphin that had seen better days. The morning sun cut through the fog rolling off San Diego Bay, illuminating the main gate of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado in harsh golden light. Guards processed IDs with mechanical efficiency, waving through sailors and civilian contractors with barely a glance. The man reached the window, fishing for his wallet with his free hand while his daughter pressed her face against his hip. Behind them, 3 Navy SEALs in desert fatigues approached the gate, their conversation dying mid-sentence. The first SEAL, a barrel-chested senior chief with 20 years of hard living etched into his face, stopped so abruptly the man behind him nearly collided with his back. His eyes locked onto the single dad, widening in recognition. Then, without a word, he snapped to attention. The sound of boots coming together echoed across the pavement. The second SEAL followed, then the third. Perfect, parade ground attention. Rigid spines, eyes forward, hands flat against trouser seams. The security guard looked up from the man's ID, confusion flickering across his face. The single dad hadn't turned around yet. He was helping his daughter adjust her backpack, oblivious to the silent tribute forming behind him. The senior chief's jaw was set, his gaze unwavering, fixed on the back of that gray sweatshirt like it was a flag at a funeral. More SEALs were arriving now, stepping out of trucks, walking across the parking lot. One by one they came to attention. No commands given, no words exchanged, just the crisp snap of boots and the weight of respect that needs no explanation. The security guard handed back the ID, his hand trembling slightly. The name on it meant nothing to him, but the reaction it caused meant everything. The single dad finally noticed the silence, that particular quality of silence that only comes when trained warriors choose stillness over noise. He turned, and for a moment his weathered face showed something between pain and pride. His daughter looked up at the SEALs, her eyes wide, not understanding but sensing the gravity. The senior chief held his salute now, unauthorized but necessary. Others followed. A wall of silent acknowledgement for a man in civilian clothes who had clearly once worn something else. Something earned in blood and sand and the kind of darkness that doesn't wash away with ocean fog. The man's hand tightened around his daughter's. He gave a single nod. Nothing more. Then he walked through the gate, that gray sweatshirt disappearing into the base while behind him, warriors remained at attention until he was gone from sight. The story began 3 days earlier, though its roots stretched back 15 years to the mountains of Afghanistan. Major Anya Volkov sat in the back of a briefing room at Miramar Air Station, her arms crossed, her expression carefully neutral. The PowerPoint presentation at the front of the room detailed close air support protocols for an upcoming joint exercise between Marine Recon and SEAL Team 7. The briefer, a Marine captain with a freshly pressed uniform and the kind of confidence that came from never being shot at, clicked through slides showing Thunderbolt attack patterns. Anya had flown A-10s in 3 combat deployments. She'd put 30mm rounds into Taliban positions so close to friendly forces that her altimeter had screamed warnings about terrain clearance. She'd flown missions where the difference between life and death for men on the ground came down to her ability to thread cannon fire through a 60-meter margin of error. But the Marine captain wasn't briefing to her. He was briefing to the men seated in the front rows, the recon Marines and SEALs who would be participating in the exercise. Anya was just the backup pilot, the spare, the one they'd call if the primary couldn't make it. Her call sign was Whisper, earned years ago in a firefight where her radio had malfunctioned, and she'd talked a SEAL team through an extraction using nothing but engine sounds and careful timing. 1 pass meant yes, 2 meant no, 3 meant danger close. She'd saved 16 men that day without speaking a word. But call signs fade when you're not in the rotation. When you're the pilot they bring out for training exercises and public affairs events. When your last combat mission was 5 years ago, and every new stick jockey with a fresh commission assumes you're past your prime. Anya was 42. In fighter pilot years, that made her ancient. Never mind that her reflexes were still sharper than most pilots half her age. Never mind that she could read terrain like poetry and sense wind shear before instruments caught it. She was a woman in her 40s who'd had the audacity to take a year off after her daughter was born. In the A-10 community, that was unforgivable. The briefing ended. Marines filed out, talking about weapon systems and target packages. One of the SEALs paused near Anya's seat. Senior Chief Marcus Cade, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from granite and weathered by sandstorms. He didn't say anything, just gave her a nod. The kind of nod that carried weight. Anya nodded back. Cade had been on the ground that day 15 years ago when her radio failed. He'd been the team leader watching tracers light up the night while an A-10 circled overhead, somehow knowing exactly where to put rounds without a single word of guidance. The exercise was scheduled for 72 hours from now. Camp Pendleton's northern training areas, where desert scrub met coastal hills, and the Marine Corps had built entire fake villages for urban warfare practice. SEAL Team 7 would insert via helicopter, simulate a hostage rescue, then extract under fire. The A-10s would provide close air support, danger-close passes that required absolute precision. The primary pilot was Captain Trevor Hastings, a cocky 28-year-old who logged 200 flight hours and thought that made him an expert. Anya had logged over 3,000, but Hastings was the golden boy, the one-wing commanders trotted out for congressmen and camera crews. He'd never seen combat, but he wore his flight suit like it was a Medal of Honor. Anya drove home that evening to the small house she'd bought in Carlsbad, 20 minutes from base. Her daughter, Katia, was already asleep when she arrived, watched over by Mrs. Chen, the 70-year-old neighbor who'd become more family than friend. Anya paid her, thanked her, then stood in Katia's doorway watching the rise and fall of her daughter's breathing. The stuffed dolphin lay tucked under one small arm. Anya had bought it at SeaWorld 3 years ago, back when there'd been someone else to share these moments. Before the divorce papers arrived and her ex-husband decided being married to a combat pilot was too hard, before he'd taken the easy route and found someone whose job didn't involve occasionally coming home with ghosts in her eyes, she checked her phone. One message from the squadron ops officer: Hastings confirmed primary. Your backup. Stay on standby. Anya deleted the message and went to bed. She dreamed of mountains and radio static, and the sound of an A-10's cannon, that distinctive growl that sounded like God clearing his throat. She woke at 4:30, made coffee, and went for a run along the beach while the sky turned from black to purple to pink. By 6:30 she was dropping Katia at school. By 800 she was at the squadron, checking weather reports and mission updates nobody expected her to need. Hastings walked past her office without acknowledging her existence. Senior Chief Cade called that afternoon. His voice on the phone was rough, filtered through years of yelling over helicopter rotors. Major, got a question. Go ahead, Senior Chief. This exercise, Hastings is primary, that's correct. You flying backup. On standby. Why? Silence on the line, the kind of silence that spoke volumes. No reason, ma'am, just wanted to confirm. The night before the exercise, Anya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to the distant sound of waves and thought about the last time she'd flown combat, 5 years ago, Helmand Province. A Marine platoon pinned down by machine gun fire in a compound they couldn't escape. She'd come in low, so low her landing gear nearly clipped a wall and put rounds through a window the size of a dinner plate. Perfect shot. 0 civilian casualties. 16 Marines went home to their families. But that was 5 years ago, and the Air Force had a short memory for excellence when it came wrapped in a package they didn't expect. She was a Russian immigrant, naturalized at 16, who joined the Air Force at 18 and clawed her way to pilot training through sheer stubborn excellence. Her accent had faded but never fully disappeared, a slight roll on her RS that became more pronounced when she was tired or angry. Some pilots had nicknames. Some had call signs that were jokes. Anya's call sign was earned in blood and silence, and the men who'd been there never forgot it. But the men who hadn't been there saw only what they wanted to see: a middle-aged woman taking up space in a cockpit better suited to someone younger, faster, hungrier. She fell asleep around 200 and woke to her alarm at 500. The exercise would begin at 1,000 hours. She drove Katia to school early, hugging her daughter longer than usual. Katia pulled back, studying her mother's face. "You okay, Mama?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, just thinking. About flying. Always about flying." At the squadron, Hastings was already in the briefing room holding court with younger pilots. They laughed at something he said, a joke Anya didn't hear and wouldn't have found funny anyway. The operations officer called her over. "Hastings is good to go. You're free until we call you." "I'll stay close. Suit yourself." She went to the ready room and started running through emergency procedures in her head. Radio failure, hydraulic failure, engine fire, ground fire. She trained for everything, experienced most of it, survived all of it. At 9:30 her phone rang. The ops officer's voice was tight. "Hastings is down. Down, medical emergency, severe stomach pain. Ambulance is taking him to base hospital right now. You're up, whisper, brief in 15 minutes. Anya didn't run to the briefing room. Running showed panic, and panic killed people. She walked with purpose, her flight suit already on, her mind shifting into combat mode even though this was just an exercise. The briefing room was full now. Recon Marines, SEALs, combat controllers, the entire support package for a complex training evolution that had cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to coordinate. At the front of the room stood Lieutenant Commander James Bridger, the SEAL Team 7 operations officer. He was a lean man with sharp eyes and the kind of bearing that came from leading men through real bullets. He looked up when Anya entered, his expression unreadable. "Major Volkov, you're our CAS package. Affirm. Captain Hastings is medical." A few Marines exchanged glances. One whispered to another. Anya heard the word backup and ignored it. Bridger continued the brief. Insertion at 10:30. Target building is the 3-story structure at coordinates November Victor 7348. OPFOR will be playing hostage takers with simulated weapons. Your team extracts via the northern courtyard. Expect simulated enemy reinforcements from the east at 10:45. That's when we need CAS. He looked directly at Anya. "Danger close. Friendlies will be 75 meters from target line. Rules of engagement are exercise standard, but we're treating this like real world. No mistakes." "Understood." Anya stepped to the map, studying terrain features with an intensity that made some of the Marines lean forward. She traced her finger along the approach vector, calculating altitude, speed, angle of attack. The target building sat in a small valley with hills on 3 sides. Standard A-10 tactics meant coming in low from the west, using the terrain to mask her approach until the last possible moment. But standard wasn't always right. "Question," she said. Bridger nodded. "This extract point, your northern courtyard, what's the wall height?" 12 feet, concrete reinforced. "And the OPFOR reinforcements come from the east at 10:45. "Correct." Anya studied the map for another moment. "They'll have observers on the eastern ridgeline. If I come from the west, they'll see me before I'm in effective range. I'll take the southern approach, use this drainage ditch for concealment, then pop up at 300 feet. Gives me 7 seconds of surprise before they can react." The room went quiet. A Marine captain, probably mid-30s with Ranger tabs and the kind of mustache that violated at least 3 regulations, leaned back in his chair. "Ma'am, no offense, but the southern approach puts you in line with our extract. If you miss, you hit us." Anya didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on the map. "I won't miss." "But if you do, Captain." Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "In Helmand Province, October 2019, I put 200 rounds through a 17-meter window while Marines were stacked on both sides. All 200 rounds went where I put them. Not one stray, not one ricochet. Every man in that compound walked away. I won't miss." Senior Chief Cade, seated in the second row, spoke up. "She won't miss." The Marine captain looked at Cade, saw something in the SEAL's expression that ended the debate. Bridger continued the briefing, covering communications, abort criteria, and emergency procedures. When he finished, he looked at Anya. "Any questions, Major?" "Radio check at 10:25. Affirm. You'll be on TAD 7, backup on TAD 9. Copy." The brief ended. Men filed out toward their vehicles. Anya headed for the flight line where her A-10 sat waiting. Aircraft number 471, call sign Hog 7, a warthog that had seen 3 combat deployments and carried the scars to prove it. Patches on the fuselage where battle damage had been repaired. Faded paint on the nose from thousands of hours in desert sun. She did her walk around with religious precision. Checked the cannon barrels, 7 rotating tubes that could spit out depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 per minute. Checked the fuel lines, the hydraulics, the flight controls. This was an exercise, but her ritual never changed. Good habits in training meant good habits in combat. The crew chief, a staff sergeant named Tors with grease under his fingernails and pride in his eyes, stood watching. "She's ready, ma'am, loaded with training rounds, but everything else is real-world spec." "Thanks, Tors." "Ma'am," he hesitated. "Give 'em hell," she smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. "It's just training, Staff Sergeant. Still, give 'em hell." Anya climbed the ladder, settled into the cockpit, and began her startup sequence. The A-10 wasn't graceful, it wasn't fast. It was designed around a gun so powerful the airframe had to be built to withstand the recoil. But in the hands of someone who understood it, the Warthog was poetry. She brought the engines online, feeling the vibration through her seat, checked instruments, set radios. At 10:25 she called in. "Hog 7, radio check." Bridger's voice came back crisp. "Hog 7, Snake 01, read you Lima Charlie, teams are inserting now." Anya watched her clock. The SEALs would fast-rope from helicopters, hit the compound, execute their simulated rescue, then move to the extraction point. She wouldn't be needed until 10:45 when OPFOR reinforcements arrived. 15 minutes to stay calm while men on the ground depended on her. She'd done this 100 times. She could do it again. At 10:40, Bridger's voice came through. "Hog 7, Snake 01. Hostages secured. Moving to extract. Stand by." Hog 7 standing by. Her hands rested light on the controls. The A-10 circled at 5,000 feet, high enough to stay out of the exercise area until needed. Below she could see the sprawl of Camp Pendleton, endless brown hills dotted with training areas and roads. She thought about Katia's stuffed dolphin, about Mrs. Chen, about the life she'd built in the spaces between deployments. Then Bridger's voice cut through. "Hog 7, Snake 01. We have simulated enemy reinforcements, eastern approach, multiple vehicles. Request immediate CAS, danger close." Hog 7 copies. Inbound. Anya rolled the A-10 into a dive, pushing the throttles forward. The Warthog descended like a falling anvil, graceless but unstoppable. She came in from the south, exactly as she'd briefed, using the drainage ditch to mask her approach. At 300 feet she pulled up, and suddenly the compound was in front of her, the eastern road crawling with OPFOR vehicles marked with orange panels. Simulated enemies, but she treated them like real targets. Her targeting pod locked on. Her heads-up display showed the range: 400 meters to targets, 78 meters to friendlies. Danger close by any definition. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, steady and slow. The world narrowed to instruments and terrain. She squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon roared to life, that distinctive BRRRT sound that made ground troops simultaneously terrified and relieved depending on which side they were on. Training rounds marked with blue paint stitched across the road in a perfect line. Every round exactly where she'd aimed. Not one stray. The OPFOR vehicles skidded to a halt, exercise controllers marking them as destroyed. Anya pulled up, gaining altitude, her eyes scanning for threats that didn't exist in this safe training environment but that her combat-trained brain couldn't stop looking for. "Hog 7, rounds complete, targets destroyed." Bridger's voice came back, and there was something different in it now. "Snake 01 copies. Excellent shooting, Hog. Extraction proceeding." She circled while the SEALs loaded into helicopters and lifted away, their mission complete. Then she turned west, heading back to Miramar. The flight took 18 minutes. She landed, taxied to the apron, and shut down the engines. Tors was there with a smile that said he'd already heard the reports over the radio. "They're talking about those rounds, ma'am. Perfect line, perfect spacing." "It's just training, Tors." But she knew it wasn't. Every flight was a test. every mission a chance to prove she still belonged in the cockpit. She completed her post-flight paperwork and walked to the debriefing room. The SEALs and recon Marines were already there, still in their gear. When she entered, Senior Chief Cade stood up. Then Bridger. Then every SEAL in the room, not to attention but something close to it, respect given freely, earned thoroughly. The recon Marines followed a beat later, recognizing the moment. Bridger spoke first. Major Volkov, that was textbook. Better than textbook. Most pilots would have taken the safe approach even if it meant giving up surprise. You went danger close and put every round exactly where it needed to be. Just doing the job, Commander. That wasn't just the job, that was mastery. The debrief lasted an hour. They reviewed radio procedures, timing, terminal control. Everything had gone perfectly. At the end, as people filed out, Cade approached Anya. His face was serious, weathered by years of hard work in harder places. "Ma'am, I don't know if you remember, but we've worked together before. Hellman, 2019. That's right, you saved my team that night, saved us without even being able to talk to us." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There are pilots who are good. Then there are pilots who are so good they change how we think about CAS. You're the second kind, don't ever let anyone tell you different. Thank you, Senior Chief." He nodded and left. Anya stood alone in the empty briefing room, looking at the map still projected on the screen. The compound, the approach vector, the perfect line of simulated rounds. She thought about Hastings in the hospital, about being the backup, about the weight of low expectations. Then she thought about the sound of boots standing up in respect. She went home that evening and hugged Katia longer than usual. Her daughter, 7 years old with her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair, looked up with curiosity. "Did you fly today, Mama?" "Yes." "Was it good?" "Yes, sweetheart, it was good." The story should have ended there. A successful training exercise, respect earned, another day in the life of an underestimated pilot who'd proved herself one more time. But 3 weeks later, Anya received a phone call that changed everything. She was at home, helping Katia with homework when her cell phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Major Volkov. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, formal, weighted. "Major, this is Colonel Raymond Tasker, SOCOM Operation. I'm calling about a situation that's developed. We need a pilot with very specific experience. Your name came up." "What kind of situation, sir?" "Can't discuss it over unsecure line. Can you be at Miramar in 2 hours? There'll be a briefing." "I'll be there." She called Mrs. Chen, arranged for Katia to be watched, then drove to base with her mind racing. SOCOM didn't call pilots for training exercises. SOCOM called pilots for real-world operations, the kind that never made the news and sometimes never made the history books. At Miramar, she was directed to a building she'd never been in before, windowless and anonymous. 2 armed guards checked her ID 3 times before letting her through. The briefing room was small, crowded with people she'd never seen before. Special operations types, intelligence officers, a Navy captain with surface warfare insignia that seemed out of place. At the head of the table sat Colonel Tasker, a man who looked like he'd aged a decade in the last year. "Major Volkov, thank you for coming. What I'm about to tell you is classified top secret. If you don't want this level of read-in, you can leave now." "I'm staying, sir," Tasker nodded. 2 days ago, a Chinese research vessel was detected operating in international waters approximately 400 miles west of San Diego. Intel suggests it's actually a surveillance platform monitoring our submarine transit lanes. We've been tracking it with satellites and maritime patrol aircraft." He clicked a button. An image appeared on the screen. A ship, white-hulled, bristling with antennas. Yesterday at 300, a SEAL team launched from USS Michael Monsor to conduct a closer reconnaissance. The team was inserted via SDV, SEAL delivery vehicle, to get under their radar coverage. They successfully attached monitoring devices to the hull, but during extraction something went wrong. The room grew quieter. Tasker's voice was steady, but Anya could hear the weight behind it. One SEAL, Petty Officer First Class Ian Driscoll, became separated from his swim buddy. By the time they realized, he'd drifted too far to safely recover. The team had to abort the extraction or risk the entire mission. Where is he now? Anya asked. Adrift. We've established satellite comms with his survival radio. He's wearing a dry suit and has emergency flotation, but he's hypothermic and exhausted. Current position is 380 miles west-southwest of San Diego. He's drifting northeast with the current, but slowly. Weather window is closing. Seas are building. We have maybe 12 hours before conditions make any rescue impossible. You need a helicopter, Anya said. We need an impossible rescue, Tasker replied. Our helicopters don't have the range. Even with aerial refueling, we can't get there and back with the fuel margins needed in rough seas. Maritime patrol aircraft can't land. Surface ships are 18 hours away. This SEAL will die of hypothermia long before they arrive. Then what's the plan? Tasker clicked again. A new image appeared, an A-10 Thunderbolt with modified external fuel tanks. This is HOG-7, your aircraft. 6 weeks ago, DARPA completed a modification package for extended range over water flight. It was supposed to be tested next month. Instead, we're testing it tonight. With full external tanks, this bird has enough range to reach Driscoll's position, make one low pass, and return. A-10s don't rescue people, sir. This one will. We've loaded a specialized pod under the starboard wing. Inside is a rescue package, flotation collar, emergency beacon, medical supplies, and most importantly, a secondary flotation device. You'll fly to Driscoll's position, drop the pod at low altitude, then maintain comms until the surface ship arrives. With this equipment, he can survive another 24 hours. Anya stared at the image on the screen. Sir, I've never dropped anything from an A-10 except ordnance. The flight characteristics are going to be completely different with those fuel tanks. Navigation over 400 miles of ocean at night with no visual references. This isn't what the A-10 was designed for. No, it's not. But it's what we have, and Driscoll is out of time. Tasker leaned forward. You're being asked because of what happened 3 weeks ago. Commander Bridger couldn't stop talking about your precision under pressure. Senior Chief Cade personally recommended you. They said if anyone could fly 400 miles in the dark and drop a package exactly where it needs to be, it's you. The room was silent. Anya thought about Katia, about the stuffed dolphin, about coming home. Then she thought about a SEAL drifting alone in the dark ocean, counting his heartbeats, watching the stars. I'll need precise coordinates updated every 15 minutes, real-time weather data, and direct comms with Driscoll. You'll have all of that. Then let's brief the mission. The briefing lasted 90 minutes. Every detail mattered. Driscoll's last known position, updated by satellite, wave height, wind speed, ceiling. The modified fuel tanks held an extra 2,000 pounds of JP-8, enough for 700 miles of flight time. The rescue pod weighed 300 pounds and would be released manually using a modified weapons pylon. There was no computer-guided system. Anya would fly low, eyeball the target using night vision, and pull the release at the exact right moment. Too high and the pod would drift off target. Too low and she'd risk hitting the water. One shot. No room for error. The weather forecast was deteriorating. A storm system was building, pushing east. They needed to launch within 2 hours or conditions would deteriorate past acceptable risk. Anya walked to her A-10, Tors waiting beside it. The aircraft looked wrong with the massive external tanks, like a bodybuilder wearing ill-fitting clothes. Never thought I'd see HOG-7 configured for naval ops, Tors said. Never thought I'd fly it this way. You'll bring her back, ma'am. Count on it. She climbed into the cockpit at 22:15 hours. Night had fallen, the airfield illuminated by harsh lights that created pools of brightness in fields of shadow. She ran through her checklist with absolute precision. Every switch, every gauge, every system. At 22:30 she called Tower. Miramar Tower, HOG-7 ready for departure rescue mission. HOG-7 Miramar Tower cleared for takeoff, runway 24 right. Good luck. The A-10 rolled forward, heavier than she'd ever felt it. The extra fuel made the aircraft sluggish, reluctant. She advanced throttles to full power and felt the Warthog accelerate, eating up runway, finally lifting off at a higher speed than normal. The gear came up. She turned west, toward the ocean, toward darkness. The lights of San Diego fell behind. Ahead was nothing but night and stars and the invisible line where sea met sky. She climbed to 5,000 feet, established her heading, and settled in for the longest flight of her life. At 22:45, Colonel Tasker's voice came through her radio. Hog 7, Snake TOC. You're looking good on track. Driscoll's position updated. 32 degrees 15 minutes north, 123 degrees 43 minutes west. He's conscious and coherent, wants to know who's coming to get him. Tell him it's Whisper. A pause, then Tasker's voice with something that might have been emotion. He says he knows that call sign, says he's in good hands. Anya flew west into darkness, watching instruments, calculating fuel, adjusting for winds aloft. The ocean below was invisible, a void that stretched forever. Navigation was pure instrument flying, trusting the GPS while her eyes saw nothing but black. Time became fluid. Minutes stretched like hours. At 23:30, she was 200 miles offshore. Fuel consumption was slightly higher than planned. She'd have enough to make the drop and return, but margins were thin. At midnight, Tasker updated her. Hog 7, Driscoll reports he can see your lights. Anya looked down at the darkness below. Snake TOC, I don't see him yet. What's his position relative to my track? You're 2 miles south. Come right to heading 270. She adjusted course and descended to 1,000 feet. Then she saw it, a tiny blinking light in the vast dark ocean. A strobe on Driscoll's survival vest, pitifully small against infinity. Visual contact, she reported. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her heart was racing. This seal had been in the water for over 20 hours. Hypothermia, exhaustion, the psychological weight of being alone in an empty ocean. The light below looked so fragile. She made a wide circle, establishing her attack run, except this wasn't an attack. This was salvation delivered by a gun platform never meant for mercy missions. Driscoll, she called on the emergency frequency. This is Whisper. I'm going to make one low pass and drop your package. Stay where you are, keep your strobe visible. His voice came back weak but determined. Copy, Whisper. Good to hear your voice, make it count. Always do. She came around to her approach heading, descending to 300 feet. The modified felt wrong at this altitude over water, the extra fuel tanks changing her flight characteristics. But she'd spent 3,000 hours in this aircraft. She knew its quirks, its tendencies, the way it responded to her inputs. The strobe light grew closer. She armed the release mechanism for the rescue pod. 100 meters, 50. The night vision showed a small figure in the water, arm raised, strobe light brilliant in the green phosphor glow. She pulled the release. The pod separated cleanly, falling. For 2 heartbeats she tracked it with her eyes. Then it hit the water 30 feet from Driscoll, close enough. Package away, she reported. Driscoll, your ride is in the water. I see it, Whisper. Moving now, she climbed and circled. Below, using night vision, she watched Driscoll swim toward the pod with agonizing slowness. Each stroke was an act of pure will. Hypothermia had sapped his strength, but seals don't quit. He reached the pod. She saw him activate the flotation collar, saw the orange marker dye spreading across the water. Collar is good, Driscoll reported. Medical pack is good. Water is still cold as hell, but I'm going to make it, thanks to you. Surface ship is 10 hours out, Anya said. Can you hold? With this gear, I can hold for days. You saved my life, Whisper. Just doing the job. She stayed for another hour, circling, maintaining comms, making sure Driscoll was stable. Then fuel requirements forced her to turn east, back toward home. The flight back was longer than the flight out. She fought headwinds and fatigue, watching fuel gauges with religious attention. At 3:45, she crossed the coastline. At 4:10, she landed at Miramar with 15 minutes of fuel remaining. Torres was waiting with the entire ground crew. As she climbed down from the cockpit, they applauded. She waved it off, exhausted, her body aching from 5 hours of constant tension. Colonel Tasker was there too. Driscoll is stable. Ship will recover him in 8 hours. You did something tonight that shouldn't have been possible. The A-10 did it, sir. I just flew. No, Major. You did it, and we won't forget. She went home at dawn, crawling into bed beside Katia, who had climbed into her mother's bed during the night. Mrs. Chen had stayed over, sleeping on the couch. Anya held her daughter and felt the warmth of her breathing, thinking about cold water and distant lights and the mathematics of salvation. The story should have ended there. A successful rescue, a life saved, Another impossible mission in the books. But 2 days later, Senior Chief Marcus Cade called her. "Major, can we meet? There's something you should know." They met at a coffee shop near Coronado. Cade arrived in civilian clothes, looking tired. He ordered black coffee and sat across from her with the weight of someone carrying bad news. "Driscoll's fine," he said immediately. "Ship recovered him. He's at medical getting checked out. Full recovery expected." "That's good." "Yeah, but there's something else. Something about that Chinese vessel." Anya waited. Cade took a long drink of coffee. "Intel's been analyzing the monitoring devices we placed on that ship. Turns out it's not just surveillance. They found evidence of active sonar mapping of our submarine transit lanes, but also something else. Data suggesting they're testing drone deployment systems. Small underwater drones, probably for mine laying or sub-tracking. That's above my clearance level, Senior Chief." "I know, but here's the thing. Driscoll wasn't accidentally separated. He was investigating something he saw on the hull during the placement, something that didn't match Intel photos. He stayed to get better imagery, and that's when the current caught him." Cade leaned forward. "The mission was never just about attaching monitoring devices. Driscoll was gathering real-time intelligence on capabilities we didn't know existed. What you did wasn't just a rescue. You saved critical intelligence along with saving a life." Anya absorbed this. "Why are you telling me?" "'Cause you deserve to know, and because there's talk of doing more missions like this, using A-10s for special operations support in ways they were never designed for. Long-range overwater insertion, CAS for maritime operations, even rescue. The DARPA modification on your bird worked better than expected. They want to test it more, and they want you to be the test pilot." "I'm a combat pilot, not a test pilot." "You're whatever the mission needs you to be. That's why your call sign is Whisper. You adapt. You find ways to complete the mission when there is no standard way. That's rare, Major, rarer than you know." They talked for another hour. Cade shared stories from his deployments, the missions that never made the news, the tight places where unconventional thinking meant the difference between success and catastrophe. Anya listened, remembering her own missions, her own tight places. When they parted, Cade shook her hand. "One more thing. The community knows what you did. Word spreads in Spec Ops. You're one of us now, even if you fly instead of swim. That means something." The following week, Anya was called back to the anonymous building at Miramar. Colonel Tasker was there, along with a 2-star general she'd never met. General Patricia Vance, SOCOM deputy commander, a woman who'd come up through Army Special Forces and carried herself like someone who'd earned every inch of rank. "Major Volkov," Vance said without preamble, "I've read your file. 3 combat deployments, exemplary record, and now a rescue mission that shouldn't have been possible. I'm here to offer you a position." "Ma'am, we're standing up a new unit, Special Operations Aviation but not helicopters, fixed-wing assets for long-range insertion, CAS in denied environments and rescue operations beyond conventional capabilities. The A-10 modification you flew is just the beginning. We're looking at other platforms, other mission sets. I want you to lead the A-10 component." Anya felt her heart rate accelerate. "Ma'am, I'm honored, but I'm not a commander. I'm a pilot. You're a pilot who thinks like a special operator. That's what I need. This isn't about flying formations or by-the-book tactics. This is about impossible missions with inadequate resources. You've been doing that your whole career, you just didn't have the title. I have a daughter, General, single parent. This sounds like extended deployments." Vance's expression softened slightly. "The unit will be based here at Miramar. Deployments will be shorter than conventional squadrons but higher intensity. We can work with your family situation. The mission needs you, Major. More importantly, the men on the ground need pilots like you." Anya thought about Driscoll's strobe light in the darkness, about Cade's team in Helmand, about every time she put rounds where they needed to be while lives hung in the balance. "When do I start?" 2 weeks. You'll get orders tomorrow." The meeting ended. Anya walked out into California sunshine, her mind spinning. Everything was about to change. She picked up Katia from school that afternoon and took her to the beach. They sat on the sand watching waves while Anya tried to find words to explain what was coming. "Mama's going to have a new job," she said finally. "Is it flying?" "Yes, but different flying, harder flying, important flying." Katia was quiet then. "Will you be gone more?" Sometimes, but I'll always come home. Promise, I promise." That night after Katia was asleep, Anya stood on her small patio looking at stars. She thought about the path that had brought her here, from Russia to America, from immigrant teenager to Air Force officer, from underestimated backup pilot to whatever she was becoming now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Senior Chief Cade. "Heard the news. Welcome to the community. Don't screw it up." She smiled and texted back, "No pressure." His reply came immediately, "Just the kind that makes diamonds." The 2 weeks passed quickly. Anya completed her transition paperwork, attended briefings, met the small cadre of pilots and support personnel who would form the nucleus of the new unit. There were 6 pilots total, 3 A-10 drivers including her, 2 F-16 pilots for air superiority, and 1 AC-130 pilot for heavy fire support. All of them had combat experience. All of them had reputations for doing the impossible. The official unit activation ceremony was held on a Friday morning. General Vance presided, along with the Miramar base commander and a collection of SOCOM officers. The unit designation was revealed: Special Operations Aviation Detachment 1, SOAD-1. Their patch showed a warthog silhouetted against a trident, the marriage of air power and special operations. Anya was designated the flight lead with the rank of lieutenant colonel, a promotion that came with the position. She stood at attention while Vance pinned on her new rank, feeling the weight of silver oak leaves that represented responsibility more than prestige. "Lieutenant Colonel Volkov," Vance said formally, then softer, "make us proud." "Yes, ma'am." The ceremony ended. Pilots scattered to their aircraft to begin training. Anya walked to Hog 7, still bearing the modifications from the Driscoll rescue, now permanent. Torres met her with a grin. "Congratulations, Colonel, though you'll always be Major to me." "I'll take that as a compliment, Torres." "It is, ma'am. It absolutely is." She flew that afternoon, testing new equipment, new procedures, new ways of thinking about what an A-10 could do. The training was intense. Long-range navigation, air refueling in bad weather, communications with special operations teams using protocols she'd never learned in conventional squadrons. But underneath all the new skills was the same basic truth: put ordnance on target, protect the men on the ground, come home alive. 3 months later, SOAD-1 received its first real-world mission. A SEAL team operating in Yemen needed emergency extraction. Conventional helicopters couldn't reach them due to air defense threats. F-16s could fly the mission but couldn't carry enough fuel and rescue equipment. Anya flew with 2 other A-10s, a 3-ship formation that penetrated hostile airspace at low altitude, suppressed enemy positions, and provided cover while a daring helicopter extraction happened under their protective circle. 0 friendly casualties. Mission success. The missions kept coming. Some made the news, carefully sanitized. Most remained classified. Anya flew them all with the same focused competence, the same refusal to accept failure. Her call sign spread through the special operations community. Whisper became synonymous with precision and reliability, but success came with costs. Katia grew older, more aware of her mother's dangerous work. Mrs. Chen aged too, though she refused to admit it. Anya's ex-husband remarried and stopped calling, as if his daughter existed only in past tense. And Anya herself changed, hardened by the weight of responsibility, by nights lying awake wondering if the next mission would be the one where she didn't come home. 2 years after SOAD-1's activation, Anya flew her last combat mission. Not last ever. She couldn't know that at the time, but last in this particular chapter. The mission was supposed to be routine. A Marine recon team in Syria needed close air support while extracting from a surveillance position. Enemy forces had detected them and were closing in. Anya launched with her wingman, Captain Diana Reeves, call sign Razor, a younger pilot who'd proven herself capable over dozens of missions. They flew into Syria at dusk, navigation lights off, hugging terrain to avoid radar. The recon team's position was marked on her display, a small green icon surrounded by hostile red. Standard CAS profile: come in fast, hit hard, get out. But when they arrived on station, the situation had deteriorated. The Marines were pinned down in a small building, taking fire from 3 directions. Enemy reinforcements were arriving by truck. The extraction helicopter was 10 minutes out, and those 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours. Hog Flight Reaper 3-1, the Marine controller's voice was tight. We're taking heavy fire from technicals north and east. Need immediate suppression or we won't make extract. Reaper 3-1 whisper, I'm inbound from the south. Razor will take the northern group. Talk me onto target. Whisper, northern technical is 70 meters from our position. They're behind a stone wall using it for cover. 70 meters. Danger close by any standard. Anya came in low, her targeting pod locked onto the northern position. She could see the technical truck, its mounted gun spitting fire toward the building. She could see Marines inside, their muzzle flashes barely visible through windows. She squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 roared. 30mm rounds walked across the wall and into the technical, tearing it apart. Secondary explosions, ammunition cooking off. The gun fell silent. Northern target destroyed, she reported, pulling up hard. Razor, eastern target is yours. Razor's in. But before Reeves could make her pass, a new voice cut through the radio. MANPADS, MANPADS. Missile launch, you're 6 o'clock. Anya's threat warning system screamed. A surface-to-air missile, heat-seeking, tracking her engine exhaust. She dumped flares and broke hard left, the A-10 groaning under the G-forces. The missile went for the flares, detonating harmlessly behind her. But the threat wasn't over. Another launch, this one tracking Reeves. Razor break right. Reeves reacted instantly, but the missile was fast. It detonated near her tail, shrapnel tearing through the A-10's left engine and hydraulics. Anya saw the flash, saw Reeves' aircraft shudder. I'm hit. Reeves' voice was strained. Left engine is out, hydraulics are failing. I'm losing flight controls. Razor, status. Aircraft is flyable but degrading. I need to get clear of the area before I lose it completely. The Marines were still pinned down. The helicopter was still 8 minutes out. Anya made a decision. Razor, head for the emergency strip at Al-Hasaka. I'll cover the extraction. Whisper, you can't provide CAS alone against this many threats. I've done more with less. Go now. Reeves didn't argue. She turned northeast, nursing her crippled A-10 toward the nearest friendly airfield. Anya turned back to the fight. She was alone now, 1 aircraft against unknown numbers of enemy fighters and at least 1 MANPADS team. The smart move was to stay high, out of missile range, and provide what support she could from altitude. But altitude meant less accuracy and the Marines needed precision. She came in low again, targeting the eastern technical. More cannon fire, more destruction. The truck erupted in flames, but coming low made her vulnerable. Another missile launch. She dumped flares, broke hard, felt the missile detonate close enough to rattle her airframe. Damage warnings lit up her panel, but the A-10 kept flying. The Warthog was built to take punishment. Reaper 3-1, threats are suppressed. You have 3 minutes until your ride arrives. Use them. Whisper, you're taking hits. We can hold longer if you need to egress. Negative. My job is keeping you alive until that helicopter lands. I'm not leaving. She circled overhead, watching for new threats, ready to dive again if needed. The minutes stretched. Her fuel was low. Her aircraft was damaged, but the Marines were alive. The helicopter appeared, a CH-53 coming in fast and low. It flared, landed, and Marines sprinted aboard. 30 seconds on the ground, then it was lifting off, turning away. Reaper 3-1 is clear. Thanks for the save, Whisper. Anytime, Reaper. Anya turned west, toward home. The flight back was tense. Her A-10 was handling sluggishly, damage she couldn't fully assess in the cockpit. Fuel consumption was higher than normal, possibly a leak. But she coaxed the Warthog across the border, into Iraqi airspace, then to Al-Hasaka where Reeves had landed. She brought the aircraft in carefully, feeling every control input, nursing it down to a landing that was harder than she wanted but safe. When she climbed out, maintenance crews swarmed the aircraft. Torres was there. He'd flown in on a C-130 to support the mission. He looked at the damage and whistled low. Colonel, you brought this bird home on prayers and stubbornness. The A-10 brought herself home, I just steered. but she could see it: shrapnel damage across the tail, hydraulic fluid leaking, sections of skin peeled back from near-miss detonations. Hawk 7 had taken a beating and kept flying exactly as designed. Reeves approached, limping slightly. "You should have let me stay. You were hit. No point in both of us taking damage. You could have been killed." Anya looked at the younger pilot. "So could you. So could those Marines. We all took risks today, that's the job." They flew home 2 days later after field repairs. Hawk 7 was patched together enough to make the trip, though she'd need major maintenance at Miramar. Anya spent the flight thinking about risk and responsibility, about the fine line between courage and recklessness. Was she pushing too hard, taking too many chances? Or was this simply what the mission demanded? She didn't have answers. She only had more missions, more men depending on her, more nights wondering when her luck would run out. 6 months after Syria, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other Tuesday, everything changed. Anya was at the squadron reviewing training schedules when her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered. "Lieutenant Colonel Volkov." Anya, the voice was familiar but unexpected. Her ex-husband, Victor, they hadn't spoken in over a year. "What do you want, Victor?" "It's about Katia. She's asking questions about what you do. She knows it's dangerous. She's having nightmares." Anya felt cold. "What kind of nightmares?" "Dreams about you not coming home. She won't tell me details, but her teacher called. Says Katia is distracted, worried. She's 9 years old, Anya, too young to carry this." "I'll talk to her." Maybe talking isn't enough. Maybe she needs stability, a parent who's actually home. There it was, the accusation that had underlaid their entire marriage, the reason it had failed. Her commitment to the mission had been greater than her commitment to domestic tranquility, and Victor had never forgiven her for it. "I'm doing important work." "I know, but Katia needs her mother more than the Marines need their pilot." The conversation ended badly, with nothing resolved. Anya sat in her office feeling the weight of impossible choices. That evening she picked Katia up from school. Her daughter was quiet in the car, staring out the window. "Papa called you," Katia said finally. "He did. Thinks you should quit flying." "What do you think?" Katia was silent for a long moment. "I think you're good at it. I think people need you, but I also think I need you." "I know, sweetheart, and I'm here. But what if one day you're not?" Anya pulled the car over, turned to face her daughter. Katia's eyes were her own, green, intense, capable of seeing through walls and defenses. "I can't promise nothing will ever happen. My job is dangerous, but I can promise I'm careful. I'm good at what I do. And I always come home." "Mama." "Yes, I'm proud of you, but I'm also scared." Anya pulled her daughter close, feeling tears she refused to let fall. "I know, I'm scared sometimes too, but being scared doesn't mean we stop doing important things. It means we do them carefully and we hold on to each other when we can." They sat in the car for a long time, holding each other while traffic passed by outside. That night, after Katia was asleep, Anya made a decision. She wrote a letter to General Vance requesting a transfer to a training role, something with fewer deployments and less risk. She wrote it, read it, then deleted it without sending. She couldn't leave. Not yet. There was still work to do, missions to fly, men on the ground who needed someone like her overhead. But the weight of that choice pressed down like altitude, making it harder to breathe. 3 years passed. Anya flew missions, trained pilots, watched Katia grow from a worried 9-year-old into a determined 12-year-old who decided she wanted to be a pilot too. SOAD-1 expanded, adding more aircraft and personnel. The missions grew more complex, more dangerous, more successful. Anya's reputation grew with them. She became the standard by which other pilots were measured, the one everyone wanted on their 6 o'clock when things went bad. She earned a Defense Superior Service Medal for the Syria mission, a Bronze Star for a classified operation in Africa, a wall full of plaques and certificates that meant less than the handshake from a SEAL whose life she'd saved, or a Marine who'd walked off a battlefield because she'd been overhead. But the cost accumulated. Sleepless nights, hypervigilance that bled into civilian life, the inability to relax because her mind was always calculating angles of attack and threat vectors. She saw a therapist, a psychologist who specialized in combat stress. The sessions helped, but they couldn't eliminate the fundamental tension. She was built for this work, called to it in a way that transcended career or duty, But that calling came with sacrifices that grew heavier each year. On a cold morning in December, Anya was called to General Vance's office. The general was retiring, moving on to a position at the Pentagon, and this was her farewell tour. She'd requested individual meetings with key personnel. "Colonel Volkov," Vance said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit, we need to talk." Anya sat. Vance looked older, tired, but her eyes were still sharp. "I'm leaving SOAD-1 in good hands. Colonel Harriman is taking over and he's solid, but before I go I wanted to ask you something. Are you happy?" The question caught Anya off guard. "Ma'am, are you happy, content, satisfied with where you are and what you're doing?" Anya considered. "I'm good at my job, I find meaning in it." "That's not what I asked." "Then no, ma'am, I'm not happy, but happiness isn't the point." Vance leaned back. "What is the point?" "The mission, the men on the ground, making sure they come home." "And what about you coming home? What about your daughter?" "She's the reason I do this, to make a world where she can grow up safe." "Noble sentiment, but she needs a mother, not a martyr." Vance's tone softened. "I've been where you are. The best at what I do, defined by my job, unable to imagine a life outside the mission. It cost me a marriage and a relationship with my kids that I spent a decade repairing. I'm not telling you to quit. I'm telling you to find balance before the choice gets made for you." "I don't know how to balance, ma'am." "Then learn. Because the alternative is waking up at 60 and realizing you missed everything that mattered while you were busy being indispensable. The military will replace you in a heartbeat. Your daughter won't." They talked for another hour. Vance shared stories from her own career, the mistakes she'd made, the regrets she carried. When the meeting ended, Anya walked out feeling like she'd been to confession, seen and understood in ways that were uncomfortable but necessary. That night, Anya sat with Katia and asked her a question she'd been avoiding. "If I took a job that meant less flying but more time at home, would that be okay?" Katia looked up from her homework. "Would you be happy?" "I don't know, maybe not at first." "Then don't do it. I want you home more, but I don't want you to be sad. You're a pilot, Mama. That's who you are. Being your mother is who I am. You can be both. You just have to figure out how." From the mouths of 12-year-olds came wisdom that adults spent lifetimes chasing. Anya realized her daughter was right. The answer wasn't choosing between mission and family. It was finding a way to honor both. She requested a meeting with Colonel Harriman, the new SOAD-1 commander. He was a former F-16 pilot, competent and respected, who'd spent 2 decades in special operations support. "Sir, I'd like to propose a change to my role." "I'm listening, Colonel." "I want to remain in SOAD-1, but I'd like to split my time. 50% flight operations, 50% training and development. We're bringing in new pilots constantly. They need someone who's been there, who can teach them not just procedures but the mindset. I can do that while still flying enough missions to stay current." Harriman considered. "It's irregular. So is everything we do." He smiled. "Fair point. But if you're training, you're not available for every mission. Some operations will go to other pilots." "I know, and that's okay. I've been the first call for 3 years. It's time to develop the next generation of first calls." "All right, we'll try it for 6 months, evaluate and see if it works." It worked. Anya found she loved teaching in ways she hadn't expected, sharing hard-won knowledge, watching young pilots grow from nervous to confident, seeing them apply lessons she'd taught and come back safe. She still flew, still felt that fierce joy when the A-10 climbed into California sky, but the missions were chosen more carefully. She passed on some operations, recommended other pilots, built a bench of capability that meant SOAD-1 wasn't dependent on any one person. Katia noticed the change. More dinners together, more homework help. More bedtime stories, though at 12 Katia was aging out of stories and into conversations about life and choices and what it meant to find your place in the world. "Did you always want to fly?" Katia asked one evening. "Always. From the first time I saw a plane, I knew that's what I wanted to do." "Was it hard because you're a woman?" "Sometimes, but mostly it was hard because flying is hard. The gender stuff was just noise. I learned to ignore noise and focus on skill." "Do you think I could be a pilot?" "If you work for it, absolutely. You've got the right genes." Katia laughed. "You mean stubbornness. I prefer to call it determination." They talked late into the night, mother and daughter, pilot and future aviator. Anya felt something she hadn't felt in years, contentment. Not happiness exactly, but a sense of rightness, of pieces fitting together in ways that worked. 4 years after her conversation with General Vance on a morning that started like any other, Anya received a call that would close one chapter and open another. She was at the squadron, working with a young lieutenant on threat recognition when her phone rang. Senior Chief Marcus Cade. She stepped outside to take the call. Major, sorry, Colonel, old habits. It's fine, Marcus, what's up? I'm calling with a request. Actually, more than a request, an invitation. I'm listening. I'm retiring next month, 25 years in the teams. They're doing a ceremony at Coronado, the whole formal thing. I'd like you to be there. You and a few others who made a difference in my career. Anya felt emotion tighten her throat. I'd be honored. There's more. They're doing a wall, a memorial wall in the Team 7 compound. Names of people who saved SEAL lives, pilots, PJs, corpsmen, people who were there when everything went to hell. Your name is going on that wall. Your call sign, your rank, and one word, reliable. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, just show up. Let my guys thank you properly. The ceremony was 2 weeks later. Anya wore her dress blues, ribbons and badges arranged with precision. Katia came too, 15 now and tall enough to look her mother in the eye. They drove to Coronado on a Saturday morning, the California coast brilliant under winter sun. The ceremony was formal and moving. Senior Chief Marcus Cade retired after 25 years of service that had taken him to every conflict zone on Earth. Teammates spoke, commanders praised, and through it all Cade stood at attention with the kind of dignity that came from a life lived in service to others. After the formal ceremony, Cade led a small group to the Team 7 compound. The memorial wall was black granite, polished to a mirror shine. Names were etched in silver, grouped by war and mission. Near the bottom in the support personnel section, Anya found her name. LT Call Anya Volkov, USAF call sign. Whisper, reliable beside her name were a dozen others, pilots and medics and forward air controllers who'd been there when it mattered. She stood looking at her name on that wall and felt tears she couldn't stop. Katia took her hand. You earned this, Mama. We all did. Everyone on this wall earned it together. Cade approached. Thank you for coming. And thank you for every time you were overhead when we needed you. You saved a lot of lives, Colonel, including mine. We don't forget that. They talked for a while, old war stories and memories that carried weight. Other SEALs approached, some she knew, others she'd never met but who knew her call sign. They thanked her with the economy of words that special operators used, handshakes and nods that conveyed more than speeches. As the sun set, Anya and Katia walked to the beach. They sat on the sand watching waves, the same waves that had carried Driscoll toward hypothermia years ago, the same ocean that had tested her limits and proved she was capable of meeting them. Tell me about Whisper, Katia said. How'd you get the name? Anya told the story. The radio failure, the SEAL team, the communication through silence and perfect precision. Katia listened with the intensity of someone who understood that some stories were more than stories. They were lessons in who we become when everything else falls away. I want to be like you, Katia said. You want to be a pilot. I want to be someone people can rely on, someone who shows up when it matters. Then you're already halfway there. The rest is just skill and stubbornness. They laughed together, 2 generations of determination sitting by the ocean, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that had no names. 5 years later, Anya was promoted to full colonel and given command of SOAD-1. Colonel Harriman moved up to SOCOM staff, and the unit needed a commander who understood its mission from the ground up. Anya accepted the position with a clear understanding of what it meant. Less flying, more administration, the slow transition from operator to leader. She was 47 now, her body still capable but showing the wear of decades in fighter cockpits. Her reflexes were still sharp, but recovery took longer. Injuries accumulated. She knew her time in the cockpit was finite, measured in years rather than decades, but she could still contribute, still build something that would outlast her tenure. Under her command, SOAD-1 expanded again. They added unmanned systems, integrated new weapons packages, developed tactics for operating in contested environments against near-peer adversaries. The unit became the model for special operations aviation, visited by allied nations and studied by military planners. Anya flew less but led more. She mentored young pilots, guided career decisions, fought bureaucratic battles for resources and recognition. It wasn't the visceral satisfaction of putting rounds on target, but it had its own rewards. Katia graduated high school and entered the Air Force Academy. Anya attended the acceptance ceremony, watching her daughter take the oath with pride that threatened to overwhelm her. The girl who'd been scared of her mother's dangerous job had grown into a young woman determined to follow the same path. "You know it's going to be hard," Anya told her the night before Katia left for Colorado. "Harder for you than for male cadets. Harder because you're my daughter and people will expect you to be perfect." "Good, I plan to be perfect," Anya smiled. "That's my girl. Stubborn and impossible. I learned from the best." They hugged for a long time, mother and daughter, pilot and future pilot. When Katia finally left, Anya felt both pride and grief, the bittersweet knowledge that she'd raised someone strong enough to walk into danger with their eyes open. 2 years into Anya's command, SOAD-1 faced its biggest test. A joint operation in Eastern Europe, details still classified, that required simultaneous air and ground operations against a sophisticated adversary. Anya commanded from the operations center, watching displays showing the positions of her aircraft and the special operations teams they supported. The mission was complex, requiring perfect timing and absolute precision. For 12 hours, Anya directed aircraft, made decisions, adjusted plans as situations evolved. At one point, an A-10 took damage. Captain Diana Reeves, call sign Razor, flying Anya's old aircraft, Hog 7. The aircraft was hit by anti-aircraft fire, but Reeves kept it flying, kept providing support and brought it home on one engine and prayers. Anya watched it all from the operations center, feeling the helplessness of command, the frustration of being unable to fly the mission herself. But she also felt pride in the unit she'd built, the pilots she'd trained, the culture of excellence and reliability that had become SOAD-1's hallmark. The mission was a complete success. 0 friendly casualties, all objectives met and enemy capabilities degraded. After the debrief, as personnel filed out exhausted and satisfied, Reeves approached Anya. "Colonel, got a minute?" "Always, Razor. I wanted to thank you for training me, for building this unit, for showing us what right looks like. When I took fire today and had to decide whether to abort or continue, I thought about Syria, about you staying alone against impossible odds to cover that extraction. If you could do that, I could handle one damaged engine." Anya felt emotion rise. "You made the right call, but don't make me your standard. I took too many risks." "You took calculated risks. There's a difference, you taught us that. Courage isn't recklessness. It's clear-eyed assessment of danger and choosing to proceed anyway because the mission requires it." They talked for a while longer, then Reeves left. Anya sat alone in the quiet operations center, surrounded by dark screens and silent radios, thinking about legacy and what she was building beyond her own achievements. Anya commanded SOAD-1 for 4 years. In that time, the unit flew over 2,000 combat missions with a perfect record. Every team supported successfully, every mission completed, 0 aircraft lost. It was a record that shouldn't have been possible, built on the foundation of rigorous training, careful planning, and a culture that valued competence over bravado. But all commands end. At 51, Anya was offered a position at the Pentagon, working Special Operations Integration for the Air Force. It was a promotion, a recognition of her contributions, and a job she didn't want. She'd spent her career in cockpits and command centers, not conference rooms and congressional briefings. But the Air Force needed her expertise at the strategic level, needed someone who understood special operations from the inside to help shape policy and resource allocation. She accepted the position with reluctance, knowing it meant leaving SOAD-1, leaving Miramar, leaving the community she'd helped build. Her change of command ceremony was held on a perfect June day. General after general spoke about her contributions. The SOCOM commander presented her with the Distinguished Flying Cross for the totality of her career. SEALs and recon Marines filled the audience, silent testimony to the bonds she'd forged between air and ground. At the end of the ceremony, as tradition dictated, Anya's successor took command of the unit. Colonel James Park, a former F-16 pilot she'd mentored years earlier, received the guidon and spoke about continuing her legacy. Then Anya spoke. She kept it short, knowing that operators hated long speeches. "I've been privileged to serve with the finest warriors in the world. You taught me that excellence isn't about never failing. It's about getting up every time you're knocked down and finding a way to complete the mission. SOAD-1 is more than an organization. It's a commitment that when someone on the ground needs us, we will be there. Reliable, precise, unstoppable. That commitment doesn't end with my departure. It's woven into this unit's DNA now, and it will continue long after we're all gone. Thank you for letting me be part of something bigger than myself." The ceremony ended. People approached to shake her hand, to thank her, to wish her well. Senior Chief Cade was there, retired now but still carrying himself like a warrior. "You built something that will outlast you, Colonel. That's the best legacy anyone can have." "I had good material to work with, Senior Chief." "Maybe, but material needs a craftsman. You were that." As the sun set, Anya stood alone on the flight line, looking at the A-10s parked in their revetments. Hog 7 was there, still bearing scars from multiple missions, still flying, still reliable. She walked to the aircraft, placed her hand on its scarred fuselage. "Thanks for keeping me alive," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. She moved to Washington, D.C., started her new job, and hated every minute of it. The work was important: resource allocation, policy development, interagency coordination, but it felt bloodless compared to flying. She attended meetings, wrote position papers, briefed senior leaders. Her days were filled with PowerPoint presentations and budget spreadsheets instead of weather briefings and mission planning. Katia was at flight training now, learning to fly T-38s at Laughlin Air Force Base. They talked every week, mother and daughter separated by a continent but connected by shared passion. Katia was excelling, as Anya had known she would. The stubbornness had found its expression in determination and skill. 6 months into her Pentagon assignment, Anya received an email that changed everything. It was from a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell her story, to create a film about female pilots in special operations. The filmmaker had interviewed dozens of people, SEALs, Marines, pilots, and the same name kept coming up: Whisper. Anya's first instinct was to decline. She'd spent her career avoiding publicity, keeping her head down and letting her work speak for itself. But the filmmaker was persuasive. This wasn't about celebrating one person. It was about showing what was possible, about inspiring the next generation of female aviators. After weeks of consideration, Anya agreed. The documentary team followed her for 6 months. They interviewed people from across her career: Torres, the crew chief who'd maintained her aircraft; Cade, the SEAL whose life she'd saved; Reeves, the pilot she'd mentored; even Victor, her ex-husband, who spoke with grudging respect about her dedication. They filmed her at the Pentagon, at SOAD-1, even at her home where the walls held photos of Katia and a dusty collection of medals she never looked at. The hardest part was reviewing old footage, watching herself climb out of cockpits after combat missions, seeing the younger version of herself that had carried so much weight without knowing how heavy it would become. The documentary was released 18 months later. Whisper, the pilot who changed special operations, premiered at a military film festival and won Best Documentary. It was picked up by streaming services, viewed by millions, and suddenly Anya found herself recognized in airports and restaurants. People thanked her for her service, asked for autographs, wanted photos. It was uncomfortable and overwhelming, but it served a purpose. Applications to Air Force flight training from women increased by 30%. Katia called after the documentary was released. "Mama, everyone here has seen it. They look at me differently now." Good differently or bad differently? Both. Some think I'll get special treatment because of you. Others assume I'll be as good as you. The pressure is intense. Welcome to the family business. How are you handling it? Same way you taught me. Ignore the noise, focus on skill, prove yourself every day. That's my girl. 3 years passed. Anya completed her Pentagon assignment and was offered a position at Air War College as an instructor, teaching the next generation of air combat leaders. She accepted gratefully, eager to get back to teaching, back to working with pilots instead of policy. She moved to Alabama, bought a small house near Maxwell Air Force Base, and settled into a routine that felt more like purpose than the Pentagon ever had. Katia graduated from flight training and was selected for A-10s. Anya attended the ceremony where her daughter received her wings, watching with pride as Katia pinned on the silver wings that had defined Anya's own life. "You're an A-10 pilot now," Anya said afterward. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying and perfect," Katia replied. "Good, that means you're taking it seriously." They had dinner that night, talking about the Warthog, about tactics and procedures, about the community Katia was entering. Anya shared wisdom accumulated over 30 years, trying to compress decades of experience into one conversation. "Remember," Anya said as they parted, "the aircraft is just a tool. What matters is the mind behind it. Stay sharp, stay humble, and never forget that someone's life depends on you doing your job perfectly." "I won't forget, Mama, I promise." Anya was 55 when Katia deployed for the first time. Her daughter was assigned to the 74th Fighter Squadron at Moody Air Force Base, and 3 months later the squadron deployed to an undisclosed location in the Middle East. Anya tried not to worry, but worry came anyway. Every day without hearing from Katia felt like a weight pressing down. Every news report about conflict in the region made her heart race. She understood now what her ex-husband had felt, what Mrs. Chen had carried quietly all those years, the special torture of loving someone who flew into danger as a matter of routine, but she couldn't show worry. When Katia called via satellite phone, Anya kept her voice steady, asked about missions in general terms, nothing classified, gave advice when asked and stayed silent when not. "How do you do it?" Katia asked during one call. "Do what?" "Stay calm." "You had to have been scared sometimes when you flew combat, but you never showed it." "Being scared doesn't help anyone, being competent does. I focused on what I could control, my skills, my preparation, my decisions, and let go of everything else." "Is that a Buddhist thing?" Anya laughed. "It's a pilot thing. Buddhism is optional." They talked for 20 minutes before the connection dropped. Anya sat in her Alabama living room, looking at photos of her daughter as a child, as a teenager, as an Air Force officer. The same progression she'd lived, now reflected in the next generation. Katia's deployment lasted 4 months. She flew 37 combat missions and earned an Air Medal. When she returned, Anya flew to Georgia to meet her. They embraced at the airport, and Anya felt the relief of having her daughter back safe, mixed with pride at what Katia had accomplished. "Tell me about it," Anya said over dinner. Katia shared stories, close air support missions, TICS troops in contact, danger close strikes that required absolute precision. She described the weight of responsibility, the satisfaction of protecting men on the ground, the exhaustion that went bone deep. And Anya listened, hearing echoes of her own experience, seeing herself reflected in this young woman who'd chosen the same hard path. "Was it worth it?" Anya asked. "Absolutely. Every flight where I helped someone, every mission where everyone came home, that's worth any amount of stress or danger." "Good. Then you understand." They talked late into the night, two pilots separated by a generation but united by shared understanding of what it meant to fly combat, to carry responsibility, to measure success in lives saved rather than medals earned. At 57, Anya retired from the Air Force. 35 years of service, from second lieutenant to full colonel, from unknown immigrant to documentary subject. Her retirement ceremony was quiet, exactly as she'd requested. A few close friends, colleagues from Air War College, and Katia standing in the front row wearing her flight suit. The base commander spoke briefly about Anya's contributions. A general from SOCOM flew in to present her with a Legion of Merit. And then it was over. She was a civilian for the first time since she was 18 years old. The transition was jarring. No more uniform, no more structure. No more purpose provided by the institution. She had to find her own meaning now, build her own identity outside the cockpit. She bought a small plane, a Cessna 172, and flew for pleasure instead of purpose. She consulted for defense companies, providing expertise on close air support and special operations integration. She wrote articles for aviation magazines, sharing lessons from her career. But none of it felt like enough. The whole left by flying combat, by having a mission, by mattering in ways that saved lives. That hole was hard to fill with civilian pursuits. Then, 2 years into retirement, she received a call from SOAD-1's current commander. Colonel Volkov, or should I say ma'am, Colonel Sarachen's voice carried warmth. Anya is fine, I'm retired. Once SOAD-1, always SOAD-1. I'm calling because we're establishing an instructor cadre for advanced CAS. We need someone with real experience to train the next generation of pilots. Contract position, flexible schedule based here at Miramar. Interested. Anya felt something stir in her chest. Purpose calling back. Very interested. She moved back to California, back to San Diego, back to the community she'd helped build. The job was perfect, teaching without the administrative burden of command, sharing knowledge without the pressure of combat. She worked with young pilots, taught them the calculus of danger-close operations, showed them how to read terrain and wind and human behavior. Most importantly, she taught them the mindset, the calm competence required when lives hung in the balance. Katia was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base now, an instructor herself, teaching new A-10 pilots. Mother and daughter were both teachers, passing on hard-won knowledge to those who came after. They saw each other frequently, sometimes flying together in Anya's Cessna, talking about the next generation and what the future held. "Do you miss it?" Katia asked during one flight. "Combat every day. Really. Not the violence, not the danger, but the clarity. When you're overhead and someone needs you, there's no ambiguity. You know exactly what matters and what doesn't. I miss that certainty." "I get that, it's the purest form of purpose." "Exactly. But I'm learning that purpose can take other forms. Teaching you and pilots like you, that matters too. Maybe not with the same intensity, but with longer impact." They flew in comfortable silence, 2 generations of pilots watching the California coast scroll beneath them, thinking about the past and future, about what they'd built and what remained to be built. Anya was 60 when she received word that Senior Chief Marcus Cade had died. Heart attack, sudden and final. She attended the funeral at Arlington National Cemetery, where he was buried with full military honors. SEALs from across the community attended, along with the people whose lives he'd touched across 25 years of service. During the reception after the burial, Cade's widow approached Anya. "Marcus talked about you often. He said you saved his life more than once, and that you were the best pilot he ever worked with. He wanted you to have this." She handed Anya a small box. Inside was Cade's trident, the SEAL insignia he'd worn on his uniform. "I can't accept this," Anya said, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "He wanted you to have it, said you were one of them even if you flew instead of swam, said the trident was about brotherhood and you'd proven yourself worthy 100 times over." Anya accepted the gift, holding it carefully. "He was a good man, one of the best I ever knew. He thought the same of you." Anya left Arlington with the trident in her pocket, carrying the weight of friendship and respect that transcended death. That night, she placed it on her mantle next to her own medals, a reminder that the best achievements were measured in bonds forged rather than decorations earned. At 62, Anya was asked to speak at the Air Force Academy's graduation. She stood before over 1,000 cadets, young men and women about to become officers, and shared what she'd learned across 4 decades of service. "You're about to join a profession that will ask everything of you," she began. "It will demand your time, your energy, your courage, and sometimes your life. In return, it will give you purpose, community, and the chance to be part of something greater than yourself." She talked about resilience, about getting back up when knocked down, about competence as the foundation of confidence, about the importance of taking care of those who serve beside you. Success in the military isn't measured in rank or medals. It's measured in whether the person next to you trusts you to do your job when everything is falling apart. Earn that trust through consistent excellence, and everything else will follow. She shared stories: Syria, the Driscoll rescue, the night her radio failed and she had to communicate through silence. Not to glorify herself, but to illustrate principles: adaptability, precision, calmness under pressure. You will face impossible situations. Moments where there's no good answer, only less bad options. In those moments, remember that indecision kills. Make the best choice you can with the information you have, commit to it fully, and deal with consequences afterward. Paralysis is worse than imperfect action. The speech lasted 30 minutes. When she finished, the cadets stood and applauded. Among them, in the middle of the formation, was a young woman with her mother's green eyes and her grandmother's determination. Anya's granddaughter, Sophia, following the path 3 generations were carving through military aviation. After the ceremony, Sophia approached. "Grandma, that was incredible." "It was just an old pilot rambling." "No, it was wisdom. The kind that comes from actually doing it, not just reading about it." They walked together across the academy grounds, 3 generations of military service represented in their conversation. Katia joined them, and for a moment, Anya looked at her daughter and granddaughter and felt overwhelming pride. This was legacy, not medals or commendations, but values passed down, competence inherited, a commitment to service that transcended any one person. "Are you ready for what's coming?" Anya asked Sophia. "No, but you weren't either when you started, right?" "True, but I had good teachers and a stubborn refusal to quit. You have the same. Plus I have you, both of you. That's better than any training program." They laughed together, 3 generations of pilots standing in Colorado sunshine, bound by shared understanding of what it meant to choose service, to fly toward danger instead of away from it, to measure your worth by the lives you protect rather than the recognition you receive. Anya was 65 when she finally, truly retired. She taught for 8 years, trained hundreds of pilots, and watched SOAD-1 grow into the most respected special operations aviation unit in the military. But age caught up with everyone, even stubborn Russian immigrants who refused to acknowledge limitations. Her hands weren't as steady. Her eyes weren't as sharp. Her ability to teach remained strong, but her currency as an operator had expired. She stepped away from formal instruction and settled into actual retirement. She bought a small house in Coronado, near where Cade had lived, and spent her days flying her Cessna, reading and watching the ocean. She wrote a book, finally, sharing the lessons of her career in a memoir that became required reading at Air War College. Katia visited often, now a lieutenant colonel herself and commanding officer of the 74th Fighter Squadron. Sophia was flying A-10s in her first operational assignment. The tradition continued, each generation building on what came before. One evening, Anya received an unexpected visitor. A young woman, mid-20s, nervous and determined, standing on her doorstep in civilian clothes. "Colonel Volkov, my name is Lieutenant Emma Harrison. I'm an A-10 pilot at Moody, deployed back here temporarily. I was hoping I could talk to you. Call me Anya. Come in." They sat on her patio overlooking the ocean. Harrison explained that she'd watched the documentary, read the memoir, studied Anya's missions. She was facing challenges in her squadron, being underestimated, passed over for missions, questioned constantly despite being more qualified than her male peers. "How did you deal with it?" Harrison asked. "The constant need to prove yourself, the way they watch for any mistake." Anya thought carefully before responding. "I dealt with it by being undeniably good, not just competent, excellent. I made myself so valuable that they couldn't afford to sideline me, regardless of their personal biases. But I also had to accept that some people would never give me credit, would never see past their preconceptions. That's their failure, not mine." "But didn't it make you angry?" "Every day. But anger isn't useful in a cockpit. Competence is. So I channeled that anger into being better, sharper, more prepared than anyone else. Eventually the work spoke for itself." They talked for hours. Anya shared stories, gave advice, listened to Harrison's frustrations and fears. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Harrison stood to leave. "Thank you for your time, for your example, for showing it's possible. It's more than possible, it's inevitable. Women like you are the future of military aviation. The dinosaurs who can't see that are going extinct, one retirement at a time. Just keep being excellent and the rest will sort itself out. After Harrison left, Anya sat alone watching stars appear. She thought about all the young women she'd mentored, formally and informally, across 3 decades, each one carrying forward a torch she'd helped light. That was legacy, not her own achievements, but the multiplication of capability and confidence in those who came after. At 68, Anya received one final honor. The Secretary of the Air Force called personally to inform her that she'd been selected for induction into the Air Force Hall of Fame. The ceremony would be at the National Museum of the Air Force in Ohio, with full military honors and media coverage. "I'm not sure I deserve this, sir," Anya said. "The Air Force disagrees. You changed how we think about close air support, how we integrate with special operations, how we develop pilots. Your contributions went far beyond your personal flight record. You earned this, Colonel." The induction ceremony was held in September. The museum was filled with historic aircraft, the physical embodiment of Air Force history. Anya walked through displays showing aircraft from World War I to the present, each one representing innovation, courage, and sacrifice. Her own flight suit and helmet were now on display in the Special Operations section, alongside artifacts from other notable pilots. The ceremony itself was formal and moving. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force spoke about Anya's career, hitting the highlights: 3 combat deployments, the Driscoll Rescue, her command of SOAD-1, her contributions to training and doctrine. But what moved Anya most were the testimonials from people who'd served with her. Diana Reeves, now a brigadier general commanding an air division, spoke about being mentored by Anya and learning what excellence looked like. "Colonel Volkov taught me that being a woman in a male-dominated field wasn't a handicap. It was a perspective that made me better. She showed me that you don't succeed by trying to be like everyone else. You succeed by being undeniably competent at what matters." A Navy admiral, former SEAL team commander, talked about working with Anya on multiple operations. "The highest compliment I can give a pilot is that I trusted her overhead when my men were on the ground. Colonel Volkov earned that trust 100 times over. In the SEAL community, we have a saying, 'Quiet professionals.' That was whisper, quiet, professional, and absolutely deadly when lives were on the line." Katia spoke last, introducing her mother not as a famous pilot but as the woman who'd raised her while flying combat missions, who'd somehow balanced impossible demands and made it look easy even when it wasn't. "My mother taught me that you can't have it all at once, but you can have it all eventually if you're willing to make hard choices and live with the consequences." She chose service, knowing it cost her things: a marriage, time with me, parts of herself she'll never get back. But she also gained something: the knowledge that when people needed her most, she was there. That's a legacy I'm proud to carry forward. Anya accepted her Hall of Fame induction with a short speech. She thanked her family, her crew chiefs, the men and women she'd served with. She dedicated the honor to everyone who'd put their lives on the line far from cameras and recognition. "This induction isn't about me," she concluded. "It's about everyone who chooses service over self, mission over recognition, and excellence over mediocrity. I was privileged to fly with the best, to serve alongside heroes, and to be part of something that mattered. That's enough. That's everything." After the ceremony, there was a reception. Anya stood surrounded by well-wishers, accepting congratulations with grace while feeling slightly overwhelmed by the attention. Then she noticed a man at the edge of the crowd. He was older, in his 60s, wearing a Navy dress uniform. He approached slowly. "Colonel Volkov, I'm Ian Driscoll. We've never met in person." It took a moment for the name to register. Then Anya felt emotion rise like a tide. "Petty Officer Driscoll, you were in the water 18 years ago, waiting to die, until you flew 400 miles in the dark and dropped a package that saved my life. I've wanted to thank you in person ever since." They shook hands, then Driscoll pulled her into a hug. "I have 3 kids and 5 grandchildren because of you, because you did something impossible when no one else could. I think about that night sometimes, alone in the ocean, watching stars, making peace with dying. Then I heard your engines, saw your lights, and knew I was going home. You gave me another 20 years of life, Colonel. There's no way to repay that except to say thank you and to live well enough to be worth saving." "You were always worth saving," Anya said, tears flowing freely now. "Every one of you was worth it." They talked for an hour, Driscoll sharing what he'd done with the life she'd saved. He'd left the Navy, become a teacher, raised his family, built a good life. He'd followed her career from a distance, reading about her promotions and commands, feeling connected to someone he'd never met. "There's one more thing," Driscoll said. He pulled out a photo, old and faded. "This is my team from that operation. We took it a week before the mission. See the guy on the left?" Anya looked. A young SEAL, barely 25, with the kind of confidence that came before experience tempered it. "That's my swim buddy, the one who stayed with me as long as he could before they had to extract. His name was Marcus Cade." Anya's breath caught. "Marcus never told me. He wouldn't. He felt guilty that he couldn't hold on longer, couldn't get me back to the SDV. Took him years to forgive himself, even though there was nothing to forgive. But he never forgot that you succeeded where he felt he'd failed. That's why he recommended you for everything, why he pushed your name at every opportunity. You saved us both that night, me literally, him by taking away his guilt." Anya stood holding the photo, looking at young Marcus Cade before the years and missions had weathered him, and felt the web of connections that made up a career, a life, a legacy. Nothing happened in isolation. Every mission rippled outward, touching lives in ways you never fully understood. The day after the Hall of Fame induction, Anya flew home to San Diego. She was exhausted but satisfied, feeling like a chapter had closed. The public recognition was nice, but it wasn't why she'd served. She'd served because there was no other choice for someone built the way she was built, called the way she was called. She settled back into retirement's rhythm, morning runs on the beach, flying her Cessna along the coast, reading books she'd never had time for during her career, but also mentoring, consulting, staying connected to the community that had defined her life. Young pilots still sought her out. SOAD one still called with questions. The work continued, just in different forms. One afternoon, while organizing her office, Anya found a box she hadn't opened in years. Inside were letters, dozens of them, accumulated over decades. Letters from Marines she'd supported, SEALs she'd rescued, fellow pilots she'd mentored. She sat on the floor and read through them, each one a small window into a moment when her work had mattered to someone. One letter stood out. It was from a Marine Lance Corporal, written 15 years earlier. "Ma'am, you don't know me, but I was part of the platoon in Helmand that you supported in October 2019. We were pinned down in a compound, taking fire from all sides, certain we were going to die. Then you came in low, so low I could see your aircraft in detail and put rounds exactly where they needed to be. Not one stray, not one error. 16 of us walked away because you were perfect when perfect was required. I'm writing because I want you to know that I got married last month. My wife's name is Sarah. We're expecting our first child in December. None of that would exist without you. My kid will grow up never knowing that his existence depends on a pilot he'll never meet flying a mission he'll never hear about. But I know, and I'll never forget. Thank you for giving me a future. Semper Fi, LCPL James Morrison, USMC." Anya read the letter 3 times, tears flowing. This was the real measure of success, not medals or inductions, but the lives that continued because she'd done her job well. Children who existed because their fathers came home. Futures that unfolded because someone had been overhead when needed. She added the letter to a special box where she kept the most meaningful ones. These were her real treasures, worth more than any decoration. That evening, Katia called. "Mom, I just saw footage from your induction ceremony. Driscoll showing up was incredible. It was a gift, closure I didn't know I needed. There's talk about making a statue. The Air Force wants to commission a monument at Hurlburt Field showing you in flight gear with an A-10 in the background. They're calling it the Guardian," Anya sighed. "A statue seems excessive. Maybe, but symbols matter. Young women need to see that someone like them did something extraordinary. The statue isn't for you, it's for them. When did you become so wise?" "I had a good teacher. Stubborn, occasionally frustrating, but good." They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who'd been through fire and come out the other side. At 70, Anya attended her granddaughter Sophia's promotion to captain. The ceremony was held at Moody Air Force Base, where Sophia was serving as an A-10 flight commander. 3 generations of Volkov women stood together afterward, wearing their uniforms representing 75 combined years of service. "Tell me the truth," Sophia said. "Does it ever get easier, the pressure of being a woman in this community?" "No," Anya replied honestly. "But you get stronger. And the community slowly gets better. When I started, I was one of maybe a dozen female fighter pilots in the entire Air Force. Now there are hundreds. By the time you're my age, it'll be so normal that no one will think twice about it. I hope so. But until then, you keep being excellent. You keep proving that competence has no gender. And you remember that every flight you fly well makes it easier for the next woman who climbs into that cockpit." They took a photo together. 3 generations of pilots, 3 sets of wings, 3 pairs of eyes that had seen the world from altitudes where perspective changed everything. The photo would end up in the Air Force Museum, labeled the Volkov Legacy, 3 generations of excellence. Anya was 73 when her health finally began to fail. Nothing dramatic, just the accumulation of decades, the wear and tear of a body pushed hard in high-G environments. Her doctor recommended she stop flying, even the Cessna. Too much risk if something happened while she was alone in the cockpit. She sold the plane to a young pilot and felt like she'd lost a limb, but she adapted as she'd always adapted. She spent more time writing, more time consulting remotely, more time simply sitting on her patio watching the ocean and remembering the feel of flying. Katia visited more frequently now, worried about her mother living alone. But Anya refused to move, refused to be treated like she was fragile. She was old, not broken. There was a difference. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Anya received a call from the current SOAD-1 commander. "Ma'am, there's a young pilot here asking about you. She's read your memoir 6 times, knows every story. She specifically requested assignment to SOAD-1 because of your legacy. She's good, really good, and she reminds me of you. Stubborn, precise, quietly confident. Her call sign is Ember, thought you'd want to know." Anya felt pride swell. "Tell Ember I'm available if she wants to talk. I think she'd like that. I'll pass along your number." 2 days later, Lieutenant Sarah Ember Martinez called. She was nervous but determined, asking questions about missions and mindset and how to navigate the politics of special operations aviation. They talked for 2 hours, and at the end, Anya said something she'd said to dozens of young pilots but never tired of repeating. "Remember, you're not just flying for yourself. You're flying for everyone who comes after you. Every time you do your job well, you make it easier for the next woman. That's pressure, yes, but it's also purpose. Embrace it." "Yes, ma'am, I will. And thank you for everything you built, everything you proved. You made it possible for pilots like me to exist." "No, Lieutenant. You make yourselves possible. I just held the door open a little longer while you walked through." After the call ended, Anya sat quietly in her home office, surrounded by photos and memories. She thought about the arc of her career, from underestimated backup pilot to Hall of Fame inductee, from whisper to legacy. The journey had been hard, filled with sacrifice and doubt and moments of pure terror. But it had also been purposeful, meaningful in ways that transcended personal achievement. She had flown when flying mattered. She had saved lives that went on to save other lives. She had built systems that would outlast her by decades. And she had shown, through stubborn example, that excellence had no gender, only dedication, skill, and the courage to keep showing up when showing up was hard. Anya was 75 when she made her last visit to SOAD-1. It was an unofficial visit, no ceremony planned, just an old pilot returning to the place that had defined her middle years. She walked through the squadron spaces, seeing her photo on the legacy wall, seeing new faces doing old missions. A young pilot approached, male, mid-20s, respectful. "Ma'am, are you Colonel Volkov?" "I am. I just want to say thank you. I read your memoir in flight school. It taught me more about CAS than any textbook. The way you think about angles and timing, about reading the ground commander's voice to understand stress levels, that's genius-level stuff. It's just experience, Lieutenant. You'll develop the same instincts if you fly long enough and pay attention." "I hope so. but having your example makes it easier to know what right looks like. They talked for a few minutes before he was called away. Anya continued her walk, eventually finding her way to the flight line where A-10 sat like patient predators. Hog 7 wasn't there anymore, retired years ago, now on display at a museum. But other warthogs remained, still flying, still relevant despite being decades old. She placed her hand on one aircraft's fuselage, feeling the familiar texture of painted metal over titanium armor. "Thanks for the ride," she whispered. A voice behind her. "Colonel Volkov," she turned. Diana Reeves, now a major general, standing in flight suit despite her rank. Some pilots never stopped being pilots, regardless of how many stars they wore. "General Reeves, good to see you." "It's just Diana here. Mind if I join you?" They stood together looking at the A-10s. Reeves spoke first. "You know what your real legacy is. It's not the missions or the medals. It's that pilots like me believe we belong here because you proved it was possible. You normalized excellence from women in a community that didn't want to believe we could do this job. That's the gift you gave us. You would have succeeded with or without me. Maybe, but it would have been harder, lonelier. You were the proof of concept that made everything else possible." They stood in comfortable silence, two generations of pilots united by shared experience. Finally, Reeves said, "There's something I want to show you." She led Anya to the squadron building, to a room Anya didn't remember from her time. Inside was a small museum, artifacts from SO-81's history, mission plaques, photos of operations. And in the center of the room, on a pedestal, was a pilot's helmet. Anya's helmet from her Syria mission, scarred and worn. The nameplate read, "LT Call Anya Whisper Volkov, Syria 2019. 1 pilot, 3 threats, 0 casualties. The standard." "We put this here 2 years ago," Reeves explained. "Every new pilot who joins SO-81 spends time in this room learning the unit's history. Your helmet is the centerpiece. When they ask about it, we tell them this is what right looks like. This is the standard you're expected to meet." Anya felt overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you're proud. Say it was worth it. Because from where I'm standing, watching the unit you helped build continue your legacy, it absolutely was worth it." They embraced, two warriors acknowledging shared sacrifice and shared purpose. When Anya left SO-81 that evening, she felt at peace in ways she hadn't before. The work was in good hands. The legacy would continue. She'd done what she'd set out to do. At 77, Anya's health declined sharply. Heart issues, complications from decades of high-altitude flying, the body finally saying it had given enough. She spent time in the hospital, then came home under hospice care. Katia took leave to be with her mother, moving into the Coronado house. Sophia visited when she could between deployments. They spent those final months talking about life, career, the choices that defined both. Anya shared stories she'd never told, fears she'd never voiced, regrets she'd carried quietly. "I missed so much of your childhood," she told Katia one evening. "Always flying, always deploying, always choosing the mission over being home." "You were exactly the mother I needed," Katia replied. "You taught me that women could do impossible things if they refused to accept limitations. That's worth more than any number of bedtime stories." "But was it worth it for you? The price you